Why is Amazon paying me $63?
Hey, what's going on? Hey, how you doing? You're here with email, and what I'm about to do is go through a bunch of videos, just really figuring out what's going on with America. This is going to be current event, looking at live House and Senate type stuff. So it's going to be pretty boring. The main thing is you can take some clips out of this after I may take some clips, of course, because for the most part, it's a lot going on in the USA, and it seems like every day is always something new. So before I begin, let's go over a few things. Again, this is for democracy. So April 5th, 2025, hands off near you. All the capital places, there will be somebody out there to really let Elon Musk and Trump know to get the hands off of our Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and also to help stop the Project 2025's initiative. Cory Booker, Senator, again, great job. I really appreciate the from New Jersey. I really appreciate his energy, his efforts. In my humble opinion, I feel like he make a good opponent to become the president, which I feel that I help him out as much as I can. Again, the Panda Bear Elon Musk with the Wisconsin hat. He spent $25 million to lose. Moving on. Find handsoff2025.com to find exactly where they're going to be. It's going to be at noon. TeslaTakedown.com, 50501, the Resistance Lab. Those are places that you can help out and figure out what's going on. We are stronger together than individuals. We may all be individuals, but if we rely too much on individuality, we will be killed by individuality. When times of tough and strain, you got to get tough. We got to work together to beat this foe, because the foe is attacking our democracy. It's attacking our Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and it's attempting to attack our Department of Education. It's attempting to attack our post office. Is wishing to gut everything that we have as far as good public services. They're wishing to privatize it. That is the real agenda of 2025. All right. With that being said, we're going to be watching how the world is reacting to Trump's new reciprocal tariffs. Stand by.
Trump's announcement of universal tariffs on the whole world, including the European Union, is a major blow to the world economy. I deeply regret this choice. Let's be clear-eyed about the immense consequences. The global economy will massively suffer. Uncertainty will spiral and trigger the rise of further protectionism.
And today I'm announcing that the Government of Canada will be responding by matching the U.S. approach, with 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported from the United States that are not compliant with CUSMA, our North American Free Trade Agreement, and on the non-Canadian content of CUSMA-compliant vehicles from the United States as well. Our retaliatory tariffs that we've previously announced in response to the United States' other tariffs will remain in effect. We take these measures reluctantly, and we take them in ways that it's intended and will cause maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada.
La última llamada con el presidente Trump yo comenté que en el caso de aranceles recíprocos, a mi entender, pues no iba a haber aranceles porque como México no pone aranceles a Estados Unidos, pues Estados Unidos no pone aranceles a México.
中方多次强调，贸易战、关税战没有赢家，保护主义没有出路。中方敦促美方纠正错误做法，以平等、尊重、互惠的方式，同包括中国在内的世界各国磋商解决贸易分歧。
President Trump referred to reciprocal tariffs. A reciprocal tariff would be 0, not 10%. The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations partnership. This is not the act of a friend. Today's decision will add to uncertainty in the global economy, and it will push up costs for American households. It is the American people who will pay the biggest price for these unjustified tariffs. This is why our government will not be seeking to impose reciprocal tariffs. We will not join a race to the bottom that leads to higher prices and slower growth.
And clearly there will be an economic impact from the decisions that the US has taken, both here and globally. But I want to be crystal clear. We are prepared. Indeed, one of the great strengths of this nation is our ability to keep a cool head. I said that in my first speech as Prime Minister, and that is how I govern. That is how we have planned, and that is exactly what is required today. Nobody wins in a trade war. That is not in our national interest. We have a fair and balanced trade relationship with the US. Negotiations on an economic prosperity deal, one that strengthens our existing trading relationship, they continue, and we will fight for the best deal for Britain.
They're bad for the Irish economy, they're bad for the European economy, and they're bad for the United States, because what they do is they push up prices. They make things more expensive, and they certainly don't help consumers with the cost of living. That has been Ireland's consistent position. We deeply regret the announcement by the United States President last night for those reasons. We have built a relationship of prosperity, jobs and investment based on working together and trading together. I think, though, now that the United States has had its big bag moment and made this announcement, now is time to get around the table and try and find a negotiation way forward.
The president in America is completely free to plot its own economic policy under the, we respect sovereignty of nation states, and that's not a surprise that this is the agenda they've wanted to run with. We disagree with that agenda. We don't think that is good for global trade. We don't think countries do well when there are high tariffs and when there are trade wars. We much more believe that goods and services should be able to move freely around the world. New Zealand has built itself into a low tariff environment. Our exporters are deeply, deeply competitive. The products and services we sell are in huge demand around the world, and that's why we're opening up as much trade with as many different countries as we possibly can.
Solidarité, je le disais, sans faille, qui est requise aujourd'hui de la part de tous les membres de l'Alliance. Solidarité qui est néanmoins éprouvée par les décisions qui ont été prises et annoncées hier par le président Trump avec l'application des droits de douane réciproques qui auront des conséquences négatives sur l'économie américaine comme sur les économies de l'ensemble des membres de l'Alliance. C'est le cas d'ailleurs de l'économie européenne.
Deutschland und Europa stehen weiterhin für freien Handel. Wir setzen auf Kooperation, nicht auf Konfrontation. Und wir werden unsere Interessen verteidigen. Europa wird geschlossen, stark und angemessen auf die Entscheidung der USA reagieren.
はい、我が国からこれまでさまざまなレベルで我が国の懸念を説明するとともに一方的な関税措置を取るべきでない旨、などを申し入れてきたにもかかわらず米国政府が今般の相互関税措置を発表したことは極めて遺憾であります。WTO 協定及び日米貿易協定との整合性に深刻な懸念を有しています。
See this? This is a 400.
Hey, what's going on? So it's just kind of like what I was saying earlier, that these tariffs is not going to be any good for anybody, and it's not for the betterment of us. One thing about these tariffs, the trading partners like Mexico and Canada, it can have serious consequences. This could be harmful and disrupt our supply chains, increase costs for businesses, and ultimately raise prices for consumers. This right here, for instance, like 25% tariff on automobiles imported into the U.S. has led to higher car prices and strained economic ties. So one thing that they're doing is they're bringing in these vehicles, and now they have to go through these calculative cost analysis on how much tariffs they are allowed to charge for the building of a vehicle. Canada and America has always been aligned through the existence of both of these countries. I mean, the joke saying that, you know, they are the 51st state, it is something that we kind of already said as a joke, but it was not meant that they really were the 51st state. All we really meant was the fact that, you know, when it comes down to it, they're like our brother, they're like our sister. You know, if anything, they are our brother, they are our sister. You know, and I feel like Canada should be respected as such. When we talk about the Canada, Mexico, having responded by exploring new trade partnerships, potentially this will weaken our economic system. All right, and so the integrity of what we have built for this long is now in jeopardy. On the global scale, tariffs can trigger trade wars, which it is doing now. Some countries, as you see, that some of the countries are buckling down for tough times. Other countries are saying that they're not going to participate. All right. Anyway goes is going to slow down the economy. The growth is going to basically increase inflation. Is going to hurt industries that rely on international trade. There are a lot of metals that are molded and found in different areas of the world that are not found necessarily places where we generally go to, or if we were to have it, it's going to cost more. So we go to these other smaller countries and we buy these objects and have them imported to America. So the cost is low, not just because it came from them. It is really low because however they're producing it, they're finding a way to make it happen. And we're basically saying America only. And the thing that kind of irks me about the concept of America only is lonely when you're the only one on the playground. And if everyone is now a part of the other team, that's going to make for a bad experience for that one lone bully who thinks that they can take and do anything they want. So is this that's one reason why it took a while for the Nazi regimes for us to actually try to take care of them. We make it seem like America just right away went and fought them. No, we didn't. What happened was there was campaigns to let people know how serious it was, because everyone is so worried about going to their job and taking care of their daily lives and taking care of their family and taking care of their business, taking care of their company. If you're so worried about taking care of your company, take care of your business, no wonder we can't figure out what's going on with these tariffs until it actually hit us. We can't figure out this stuff. And then to the administration right now, they're throwing so much junk at us at once, is making it hard to be able to figure out what's going on. We don't even know what we need to figure out with. You know, we don't know what we need to concentrate on. As for making friends on the world stage, is pretty good too. It creates strong alliances. It leads to economic cooperation. And then we talk about security partnerships and cultural exchange. It's beautiful. When countries work together, they can solve global challenges more effectively. However, if economic policies like tariffs create friction, they can cause strain on relationships and push countries towards isolation or alternative alliances. And when they isolate themselves, it's easier to take over a country. That's the reason came up with NATO. NATO was to help to figure out we need to combine together, be strong together, and we're gonna fight this tyrannical evil. All right, let's get back to it. All right, so this next video is going to be 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Is going to talk about how President Trump's new tariffs will impact San Diego. All right, and it's very important to understand that San Diego most likely has more money than your city, especially if you're not in California. So let's figure it out.
Those are probably the last smiles we saw on Wall Street today. The opening bell kicking off trading this morning. Stocks saw an over 1,000 point drop for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It was down 1,400s at one point. That was down 3%.
Yeah. S&P also down. We know that it was their worst start to the day since 2022. Companies like Apple are now reporting billions of dollars in lost market value as international currencies like the yen and the pound gain against the U.S. dollar.
Live look right now, yeah, 3.42% the Dow is down. We've seen a lot of red here today. This morning, the Trump administration insisting the stock market changes are temporary, as a 10% tariff is set to hit the U.S. trading partner as well. Glad you're with us. It is 11:30 now on this Thursday. I'm Eric Connert.
And I'm Chris Groh. The president is also hitting dozens of countries with what he calls reciprocal tariffs and threats to increase them if countries respond with their own price hikes. The White House says this is a long-term plan to boost U.S. manufacturing and lower costs.
Experts say Americans will pay more for nearly everything with no real end in sight.
These changes in the stock market, while they're initial, long-term, you've got to assume, and medium-term, and employment-based, you're going to see America thrive.
Allies have tried to talk him out of it, but he really doesn't seem to understand that tariffs are paid by Americans.
China faces a 34% tariff. The EU faces a 20% reciprocal tariff. Canada and Mexico are exempt from new tariffs. This is a 20%.
All right, so looking at this, they're hitting Vietnam the hardest. So Vietnam has 46%, China has 34%, Switzerland has 32%, EU has 20%, and United Kingdom has 10%. So the 10% is not horrible. The 20%, put 20%, you're doing a little bit. Trade balance 292 billion. So we owe a lot of money to the Chinese. We're off. The only people that owe us is the United Kingdom. So very interesting. All right, let's get back to it.
Percent reciprocal tariff. Canada and Mexico are exempt from new tariffs, but will likely face new ones next month. And these tariffs will significantly impact San Diego's cross-border economy.
Yeah, we're working for your wallet, taking a closer look, studying the issue, and looking at how new international policy impacts San Diego. CBS 8's Regina Rita live in Kearny Mesa, I should say, sharing how this should shake up some local businesses.
Yeah, Eric and Chris, well, this follows President Donald Trump's announcement on a series of tariffs, including a 25% tariff on imported cars. Now, here in Kearny Mesa, of course, we have many dealerships. I was actually talking to some of the employees at one of the dealerships. They said that in the past couple of weekends, they've had really good business because some of the consumers are trying to get this recent inventory before that tariff actually takes place. So as well as some of the restaurants and shops, we know that they use imported products. So you can imagine the concern that many business owners are feeling, knowing that imported goods could get even more expensive. Economics professor Alan Jin gave some perspective on tariffs and why he and other economists are skeptical. He says the concept of made in America for America seems prosperous, but it will take time to actually see it play out. He says President Donald Trump has created too much uncertainty, and relocating takes time, if not years or even decades. So with rising prices, San Diego is sure to be impacted. Jin also adds that a tariff is a tax on imports. So if a tariff is placed on a product that's imported into the U.S., the importer will end up paying the tax to the U.S. government. And typically, these businesses pass the increase on to consumers. Now, the question that many San Diegans have is how quick people will start to see prices change at grocery stores or at certain businesses and car dealerships. Well, here's what else Professor Jin shared about San Diego businesses.
Food products like avocados, like strawberries, and things like that then are going to be more expensive. Things like tequila and Mexican beer are going to be more expensive as well.
And that's not all, but we also know that a 25% tariff on imported auto parts is also expected to take effect next month, so that could increase prices even higher.
Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100%.
All right, so what we're seeing here is kind of like San Diego is going to be affected because it's on the border of Mexico. So what's happening is Tijuana and San Diego, they're constantly going back and forth. So they're going to be more affected than a state like Kansas as in the near future. But at the same time, what they're basically saying, it's going to be a long time before we really would see any real prosperous benefit of just doing stuff in America only. It's going to take a lot of money to relocate, and then the people who have already built those factories across seas, that's crazy. Well, let's go ahead and continue on. This is all right, so what we're going to be watching, we're not going to watch all of it. We're going to probably watch about 7 to 8 minutes of the Canadian Prime Minister addressing matching Trump's 25% auto tariffs. Carney says, this is Carney. He is the Prime Minister of Canada.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Bonjour. Yesterday marked the latest in President Trump's unprecedented series of U.S. tariffs that are designed to reshape the international trading system. The ambition of these measures is enormous. The effects on the global economy will be monumental. We received confirmation that the latest reciprocal tariffs will not be imposed on Canada. At the same time, President Trump confirmed that the tariffs announced last week against our auto industry will come in, and indeed have come into effect today. So while it's progress that further tariffs were not imposed on Canada yesterday, the President's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world. Three different sets of U.S. tariffs remain in place and will continue to pose significant threats to Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. And while they have been imposed under different premises, some things are consistent. They are all unjustified, unwarranted, and in our judgment, misguided. And we are already seeing the consequences. Just last evening, workers from Unifor Local 444, with whom I met last week, learned that their auto assembly plant in Windsor will be shutting down for at least the next 2 weeks. That's 3,600 workers who are now out of work, not by their choice. Workers who now worry how they're going to put food on the table and pay their bills. I and my government stand in solidarity with those workers in Windsor and all those workers hurt by President Trump's tariffs. And that's why we committed from the very start that all, and I repeat, all of our tariff proceeds will go to protect workers affected by the tariffs. Les premiers tarifs ont été annoncés en février. As U.S. Customs and Border Protection themselves have acknowledged, there was a 97% drop in fentanyl seized at our shared border in January compared to December. In fact, Canada was not mentioned once in the United States annual report that lists the biggest threat to that country. Just last night, the U.S. Senate made it clear that these tariffs are a mistake. The Senate voted to repeal them in a symbolic but important assertion of both fact and solidarity. The second set of U.S. tariffs were imposed in March on steel and aluminum imports from around the world, including Canada. Canada has long been the United States' main supplier of these materials, materials that are vital to building Americans' homes, their cars, their bridges, their consumer goods, and so much more. These materials are vital to powering America's economy. The President pursued similar tariffs on steel and aluminum during his first term, a process which led to thousands of lost jobs in America. Then, as now, those tariffs were in clear violation of trading agreements. Today it's CUSMA, an agreement that the President himself negotiated and promoted during his first term, an agreement that we in Canada have upheld in good faith. Last week, the President and his administration announced their third set of tariffs, this time against auto imports primarily from Mexico and Canada. In the year I was born, Canada and the United States signed the Auto Pact, an agreement that ended auto tariffs between our nations and began a 60-year period, you can guess my age, a 60-year period of close cooperation, partnership, job growth, and prosperity. And that era has now ended unless the United States and Canada can agree on a new comprehensive approach. Yesterday's actions by the U.S. administration, while not specifically targeting Canada, will rupture the global economy and adversely affect global economic growth. The global economy is fundamentally different today than it was yesterday. The system of global trade anchored on the United States that Canada has relied on since the end of the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped to deliver prosperity for our country for decades, is over. Our old relationship of steadily deepening integration with the United States is over.
It's over.
The 80-year period when the United States embraced the mantle of global economic leadership, when it forged alliances rooted in trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services, is over. Well, this is a tragedy. It is also the new reality. We must respond with both purpose and force. We are a free, sovereign, and ambitious country. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. Nous contrôlons notre destin. Nous allons tracer each of these tariffs to an end. We're fighting in courts, challenging that these tariffs have been illegally imposed under U.S. law. We have filed disputes underscoring that they are in violation of our free trade agreement, CUSMA.
See this property on Craigslist for...
All right. So, I feel like we heard enough from the Prime Minister to know that what they're doing is illegal, and the fact that it goes against trade agreements, that they are doing exactly what American court system is doing against their own president, and in 14 different cases, and them only winning like 3 of them. when you talk about shutting down these different departments, they literally had like 14 cases that were in the court talking about it, and they only won like 3 of the 13, 14. So with that being said, this group is not worried about if it's legal or not. So trying to appeal to this man's heart is just asking for trouble. It's not gonna happen. With that being said, you know, the prime minister, Mr. Carney, him talking the way he's talking, I mean, you can't get mad at him. He has a valid point. You know, he's saying you're gonna charge 25, we're gonna charge 25. They held off and say we're not gonna charge on that, but we're gonna do it auto. And what he's doing, in my opinion, he's doing the test. He's doing a stress test. He's saying how much can I get away with? How much can I? And then he's gonna keep doing it. He's gonna keep doing it. And the reason why he's gonna keep doing it is because if you give in, he's gonna take more. Bullies don't like. The thing is, if you allow this man to get something, he's going to keep eating. He's not going to relent. He's not going to let it go. He's going to keep going and going and going. It's not going to be nice. It's not going to be pretty. He's not going to care about your feelings. So with that being said, we need to be smart about what we're doing and act now. And April 5th showing up will greatly help the likelihood and odds. At the same time, that's just one day. Tesla takedown, Saturdays. That's every Saturday. Resistance Lab, learn how to be a better, what they say, good troublemaker. There's a difference out of a bad troublemaker and a good troublemaker. A good troublemaker is someone who stands up for the person who can't stand up for themselves. Because right now, if you are a student from a different country, you speak up on things that's happening in your country, you may be disappeared. So if their ability to be disappeared is easier than someone who is born here, someone who is from here, our voices matter more than the people who are trying to relocate and become a part of his life. So with their visas, they're left vulnerable. Through their green cards, they're left vulnerable. Through a lot of stuff, by them not being born in America, makes them vulnerable. It's just like being a felon. If you're a felon, you can't get jobs everywhere. You're vulnerable. And right now, they're basically treating those people who were not born in America like felons. And a lot of the Puerto Ricans and a lot of the Spanish population that was born in America will be treated like felons until they have proven that they lived here. And it's not for good reason. The only reason they're doing it is because if you hear Elon Musk, he talks about birth. And I believe that he's probably working with the great replacement theory, where they feel that by white people having relations with everyone else, that their genetics will soon disappear. And they think that by immigrants coming to America, that they're going to be replaced. This is a theory that a lot of the far right groups peddle in order to fearmonger and have individuals want to ride out and, you know, do whatever they want to do as far as to the population doesn't look like them. It's easy to really dislike something that doesn't look like you, smell like you, act like you, have the same kind of morals and feelings and cultural and religious beliefs. It's very easy to do that. At the same time, we have to fight the urge to say, you're not Christian, you're not Muslim, you're not Hindu, you're not following Buddha, you know, all the other types of Shintoism, Taoism, all that stuff. It's like, when you think about it, the religion is good but it also can set us up for a lot of failures. Transgender people playing in sports was one of the heartstrings that the Republicans really won. They won that one. And the reason I say they won that one argument is because when you are a Christian, you're under the belief that, you know, the use of women in playing with men and men playing with women is a little different. It's just like being in those dark ages. Remember, we come from a time where women have been more subjugated than any other DEI period. They have been throughout the history of mankind. So when we talk about women and their ability to make money now, this is unheard of throughout countless, you know, years and generations. That's not something that generally that was not able, you weren't able to, as a woman, you wasn't able to own property, you wasn't able to vote in the 1900s. So if in the 1900s was bad like that, you can only imagine what it'll be before then. So we're now to the boring portion of today, and this is going to be Senate hearing on federal judges and universal injunctions. So, you know, eventually I'm gonna chop this up, but for right now, this is long. So what I'll probably do, I'll probably watch about 45 minutes to an hour of it, jumping back and forth.
Federal courts have, in fact, long and routinely issued relief that benefits non-parties and or has nationwide effect. My friend, Professor Bray, already referred to vertical stare decisis alongside Justices Kavanaugh and Barrett. Even Justice Gorsuch, the most visible critic of nationwide injunctions on the Supreme Court, has voted in favor of them at least 11 times since 2020. More than that, any time a court invalidates a state or federal law on its face, rather than as applied to the specific plaintiffs, it is necessarily providing relief to non-parties, since the law can no longer be enforced against anyone. That's not only well settled, there's no serious argument that it's beyond the federal court's powers. And even nationwide injunctions have virtues that other forms of relief do not. Consider the birthright citizenship cases. Do we really think that parents should have to challenge that policy one child at a time? Would it make any sense at all, even on a broader scale, for the scope of birthright citizenship to differ in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas simply because those three states fall into three different circuits? Of course, a nationwide class action could solve that problem, but it does not strike me as a coincidence that the rise in nationwide injunctions came shortly on the heels of the Supreme Court's evisceration of nationwide class certification. Chairman Grassley's bill alludes to class actions as a preferable vehicle. I could certainly endorse that idea, but tellingly it does nothing to make them more broadly available, even though Congress unquestionably could do so. Third, it seems to me deeply myopic to talk about the rise of nationwide injunctions without talking about shifts in behavior that have dramatically increased the impact of such rulings, several of which were already referred to by Professor Bray. Don't take my word for it, though. In the last 3 Supreme Court terms, we've seen 5 rulings from the justices reversing nationwide injunctions issued by hand-picked judges in Texas and Louisiana and affirmed by the Fifth Circuit because the plaintiffs in all 5 cases lacked Article III standing. There's no question that nationwide injunctions have been abused, but the abuses in those cases were not about the scope of the relief the courts were issuing. It's only exacerbated by it. And critically, those abuses would not go away even if nationwide injunctions were narrowed or eliminated. Meanwhile, the cost of eliminating nationwide injunctions would be less of an ability to restrain executive branch lawlessness at a moment in American history in which that power has proven singularly vital. So what is to be done? First, if the members' real concern is that the president should have the authorities that courts are denying to him, it seems to me that they could consider legislation to provide those authorities, rather than legislation that would prevent courts from fully and effectively enforcing existing legal constraints. Second, insofar as this committee wants to focus on procedural reforms, it should focus on reducing the ability of individual parties to manipulate the judicial system, not on limiting the ability of courts to hold the executive branch accountable, especially in an age in which Congress has proven less able to do so itself. Finally, if the committee's true goal is to improve the functioning of the judicial system writ large and not just to maximize short-term partisan political advantage, now that a Republican's in the White House, the committee could follow the model of other recent court reform legislation and have any reforms go into effect on or after January 20th, 2029. Otherwise, the message this committee would be sending is that its goal is to insulate an unprecedented degree of lawless behavior by the executive branch from meaningful judicial review, a message I can't imagine this committee wants to send, and one that the separation of powers, to say nothing of the rule of law itself, simply can't afford. Thank you again for the invitation to testify. I look forward to your questions.
All right. So if you were listening to what he was saying, let me go ahead and go back for a second. Professor Stephen Valdek, Mr. Valdek, Professor Valdek, he mentioned some great points. He's basically saying that the executive branch is wishing to go through the judicial branch to go through and just go to war in the courts in order to get what they want. It's abuse of power, and he's basically saying they're going about it lawlessly. We all know that. We all see that. They don't care about the law. If they cared about the law, they'll win more cases. But because they're losing so many cases, they'll let you know. Now, when you listen to these people, a lot of the feelings that we're seeing from those that are actually commenting about this, they're basically talking about how Trump is mentioned frequently as far as strong emotions, both supportive and critical. This reflects the polarization surrounding his political legacy. So it's that MAGA, and then we also have the critics who often have funny names for him because the Orange Man is a celebrity, and so that opens him up for that kind of scrutiny. I mean, I can tell you the last time I looked up to Trump, it was like 2005. That was the last time I thought about looking up to him, just because he was on that celebrity apprenticeship show. And then once I heard that he was conning people at a Trump University, that's when I knew better than to put my eggs in his basket. Now, throughout the chain of when people talking, Biden and Kamala oftentimes were referenced, and it was more of a dismissive, humorous tone. It shows a very contrasting opinions versus the current administration. One thing that I notice is whenever people talk about Biden and Kamala Harris, they're ultra critical. They expect Democrats to be perfect. They expect them to walk on water. They cannot do anything wrong. If a Democratic person, if you are whatever, they'll try to label you a libertarian. And we don't have a liberal issue in the USA. We have a Republican right-wing issue in the USA. We have a callous heart. We don't care about other people eating. And then once we get robbed or shot or killed by these people, then you care. Okay. And the reason why I say it like that is because you don't feed people because you love them and you like them. You feed them so their stomach doesn't ache and they don't have a reason to go out there and put the mask on at night. That's the real reason why you're supposed to feed your neighbor, outside of the whole kumbaya type of love their neighbor. You know what I'm saying? Love thy neighbor. All right. So a lot in the messages, we were hearing Nazis and fascism. That was highlighting the messages, and it was advocating against the extremism. Also, it focused on combating the hurtful ideologies that they have. Something that they also referenced in a lot of the messages that were left with this live feed was the flexibility hinting at frustrations with the U.S. political system. So this is basically why behind these mentions seems to stem from the deeply divided political climate that we're presently in, where individuals express their beliefs, frustrations, and humor in ways that resonate with their personal or group identities. It's a mix of venting, rallying, and engaging in ideology battle. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some of the comments, because I feel like it's good for you to look at the comments, because we always go to the comments. That's what we do. And there we go. So what we got? Take it from the top. Top chat. All right, top chat. Elon is a legend, a genius, and a good man who loves America. Huh? Make authoritarian go away. Yep. Yeah. Kathy Bates, in misery indeed. I agree. One should be informed before having an opinion. Kathy Bates. I don't see what Kathy Bates is. Then we got Heather Rodriguez. How many Trump voters love Elon too? Rose G. All praise be to the Almighty God. Godzilla. Page out of Communist Playbook called everyone Nazis. Angry black man. Just do until a Backet nor cow. I have no idea what that meant. Then Kevin the Basis says they weaponize cars. I mean, yeah. Think about it. Tesla look like something out of what's that, RoboCop? It's missing the flamethrower and just putting like a semi-automatic on top, or some kind of heavy dual assault rifle on the top. Poppy says Danny, LOL. No, I cannot watch nothing at my new job. LOL. My office is too close to my boss and the owner. You're right about that. Lingui says Magic Sky Daddy. That's kind of out of place. Okay, all right. Well, Magic Sky Daddy it is, then I guess. Samuel Flint at Katie Bates in misery. Unfortunately, two of those are illegitimate at this time. Hopefully, the judicial branch can handle things. Then punk rock politics. How is Elon a genius? Kevin at Bates. We're boycotting the restaurants. Judge Jury. Did you see the groupie who made him fire people? He's senile and listened to everyone. Yo, Magas, why no tariffs on Russia and North Korea? Ooh. Judge Jury, you messy. You messy for that one. You messy. Hold on. I like that one. We don't have to, put a note on that one. That one hit. That one hit. You know what I'm saying? If a strike dog don't hit, I don't know what to do. But that one hit. We don't have to, yeah. So then we're back to the angry black man. If that done work, freeze it and beat on with it, what they gonna do? Tell the cops one beating them up with did. I don't understand. Angry black man, you're gonna have to do better. I mean, I understand you angry, but you sound like you're stuttering in text form, which is kind of hard to do. I guess you know what? Angry black man, keep doing that, because you so angry we don't understand what you're saying. That sounds like you really are angry. Solomon Solomon Kurtz. Those reciprocal tariffs are the beginning of the 51st state. I don't understand that when someone down below in the comments could please explain what he meant by that. That's over my head. James Dag, Punk, are you a billionaire? Kevin Debate, he's rich. Poppy, Jenny, LOL, I talk Dutch to my boss and he gets a kick out of it. Clark Cars, I like anyone that opposes the corruption, abuse of taxpayers' money. Steve just wants to be Santa Claus, apparently. Random American, Amy, silly girl, have you read what's in grocery store dog food? The first ingredient is corn. Stuart Paul, anyone that bought fuel for their vehicles bought Russian fuel that was refined in India. All right, judge, jury, impeach the clown. Yeah, I feel you. You have to link up this judge, jury. I like him or her. Juge. Yeah. All right, let's go. Danny. Yeah, Democrats wasting taxpayer money in the millions with trials and impeachments, and then lose a landslide on election day. All right, that's cute. Cecilia Villalobos, I want the government to be held for crimes for disrespect of position. I feel they take oath, they should be held responsible. All right. Oh, we finally met the Kathy Bates in misery. You can call anything corruption and abuse if no one questions what you present. Okay, she obviously doesn't pay attention to what's going on. So out of this thread here, she might be one of the slowest people in the thread, but you know, she's not the only one. So let's go ahead and continue on. Linguia, at Punk Rock Politics, Elon is such a super big genius because he has the money to hire people who are actually smart to do work that he takes credit for, with the smile. And you know, that's one of the things that, you know, that's one of the biggest things that I have to say. The smartest people in the world are not the richest. The smartest people, in my opinion, in the world are the people who are trying to really solve people's biggest worries and fears. They're the ones who can't go to sleep at night because their brain is continually trying to figure stuff out. If you're the person who just hires the brain, in theory, someone could say that you're smarter than them, but that does not work if you had a boss. If you ever had a boss, in theory, I shouldn't say not if you ever had a dumb boss, because there are plenty great leaders. There's a difference out of being a boss and leader. If you're a leader and you happen to be in a supervisor position, you're not really a boss. You're a leader. There's a difference. So with that being said, him being the quote unquote super genius, he was just in position and he had seed money, you know. So I'm not saying he's not intelligent. He's smarter than me. I give you that. But at the same time, to call him a genius just because he's rich is silly. All right, Michael Starkey, stop the dang God talk. That has nothing to do with politics and running a country. Get over yourself. Your beliefs mean nothing. All right, Eric Carr says, when did Elon do that? Danny, at Jenny, and at Poppy. Oh, okay. And we're going to end off with these last three. All right. Kevin Debate, without fail. Ashley Renee, Washington, swampest place on earth. So I guess she's saying Washington's full of crocodiles and thieves. Big tuna. The Constitution says that what SCOTUS says, it says, and they have given absolute ultimate power to the president. Poppy says, speak for yourself. I kind of went over a little bit, but it's okay. It's all right. Let's go ahead and get back to it. And all right, so what we're going to do, we're going to continue watching. And what I'm doing is I'm taking notes and I am trying to figure out what's going on. I am not popular enough to try to run for any kind of seat. I don't have the financial backing, nor do I have the community support. All I can do is help out those who feel like they want to run. I have in the past helped others with their run to city council positions, 2 different individuals with their website and with a few of their online marketing and a few of their marketing strategies. So that's something that's something that I myself can personally do. As far as being in front and scrutinized, the same thing that happened to Chris Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo. Those are the main reasons why I would not be involved. The Democrats eat their own because they want to be too perfect, and the Republicans have no soul, so they don't care who they hurt. That's not a big deal if they hurt people. So a person like me, who I wouldn't say I'm in the middle, but at the same time, I'm not trying to allow others to take advantage of me or my family. So I'm not going to be the person who's going to put my family at risk for the rest of the nation, knowing that I live in the glass house. So let's go ahead and get back to where we were at.
Operate with federal law enforcement to remove illegal aliens who had committed serious crimes. The city of Chicago sued, alleging the grant conditions were unlawful. The district court issued a preliminary injunction, but rather than stopping at providing this complete relief to the party before it, the court enjoined the grant conditions nationwide. Cases were pending in other districts, and Chicago could not make any claim that its own interests were required nationwide relief. Yet the district judge, with one line of dubious reasoning, exerted power over every other grantee in the country, including those who didn't want it and supported the conditions, and exerted power and precluded any other judge from effectuating a contrary conclusion. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals in New York would later find these conditions lawful, highlighting how incredible it was for a lone district judge in Chicago to dictate the result in New York and everywhere else. With that example in mind, let's just highlight a few of the problems with non-party relief. The first problem with non-party injunctions is, as Justice Thomas has explained, they are legally and historically dubious. The Constitution grants to federal courts the power to hear cases and controversies, which the Supreme Court has long interpreted as the power to render a judgment or decree upon the rights of litigant parties, not non-parties. Some argue that nationwide non-party relief is a necessary check on the ever-growing power of the executive branch. But the answer is not to fix one constitutional distortion by creating another. Rather, if the concern is with the power of the administrative state, then the answer is for Congress to reassert its atrophied policymaking muscle, not to transform the judiciary into a third political branch. The second problem with non-party injunctions is they undermine the norms, rules, and structures that undergird our multi-court, multi-jurisdiction, multi-tiered legal system. One such legal norm is the concept of percolation. There are several legal provisions and practices that reflect this preference for percolation, but I'll highlight just one, and it's the U.S. Constitution. It establishes one and only one Supreme Court and such inferior courts as Congress may establish. In this hierarchical system, one district court does not bind another and one circuit court does not bind another. It is only Supreme Court judgments that are binding on all federal courts. Yet nationwide non-party relief effectively has any of 1,000 district judges wielding the same supremacy as the Supreme Court by stripping from other courts the efficacy of their judgments. The nationwide non-party injunction thus simultaneously makes every court supreme and every court a potential nullity. The third problem with non-party injunctions is they are undermining public confidence in federal courts. History has shown the American people have a stubborn tendency to demand a say in the rules that govern their lives. Humility, then, is a necessary judicial virtue for life-tenured judges who have a share of the ruling power for life and cannot face elections by the people like the other branches. But in recent years, the third branch has lost all sense of itself. It will either rediscover judicial humility or lose the support of the people and force a national constitutional crisis. Because the Supreme Court appears unwilling or unable to rein in its own branch, it is time for Congress to act. 3 legislative fixes seem advisable. First, Congress should amend the necessary statutes to make clear that federal courts do not have the power to grant relief to non-parties. Second, it appears the latest trend in relief is for district courts to enter temporary restraining orders. Those should be made immediately appealable. And third, and finally, even if Congress enacts the above fixes, it is likely that judges who believe they have nationwide power will shift from granting non-party injunctions to certifying classes. Congress should consider imposing mandatory jurisdiction on the Supreme Court for any injunction or similar order that the Attorney General certifies as a national emergency. Thank you. I look forward to taking questions.
Thank you very much. We'll have 5-minute rounds for questions. I'm going to start.
All right. What I'm gonna say is this. With that man, it's a lot that he was talking about. I'm not saying it went over my head, but I'm gonna have to re-listen to that. I know the other person had a lot more valid points to me. Let's go ahead and see what they question, how they question them.
Start with Professor Bray. One criticism has been leveled against the legislative solution that I've proposed. It's been that it undermines the judicial branch's checks and balances on the executive branch. Do you think this is a fair criticism, and how would you respond?
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I don't think it's a fair criticism. I understand where it's coming from because the place of the courts as a check and balance on the executive branch and the legislative branch is very important in our constitutional system. But the way courts do that is by deciding according to the law in particular cases. And then that ripples out to other cases through precedent. That's the way they serve as a check, without fear or favor, following the law in the case. But they serve as a check, as courts do, by deciding cases, by giving remedies to the parties in the case.
Mr. Panuccio, you have direct experience in the Justice Department dealing with non-party relief ordered by district judges. From your perspective, how significant is the problem of universal injunctions to the relationship between the executive and judicial branch?
Thank you, Chairman. It's a great question. I think it's a very significant problem, and I think it is years of this practice are eroding the relationship between the Department of Justice and the executive branch and the courts, and I think that's happening across administrations. What effectively happens when a nationwide injunction is entered is that every single case, every single policy of the executive branch becomes an emergency that needs to move up the appellate ladder very quickly. And Supreme Court justices appointed by presidents of both parties have noted that the increase in the emergency docket is straining the court, it is straining its resources, and it is also reducing the quality of decision making. And so you are seeing increased friction. And even in these district courts that issue nationwide injunctions, I think you're seeing very unfortunate comments made by some of the judges. There is a real tension between the jurists and the lawyers, and it is undermining the typical relationship between the department and the courts.
Professor Bray, you touched on this a little bit in your opening comments. As administrations come and go, the problem of universal injunctions often appear partisan. You've been calling attention to this problem since the Obama administration and have maintained a consistent position across 4 administrations now. From your perspective, is the problem of universal injunctions a partisan one? And then what's the solution?
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I do not believe it is a partisan problem, because it is a problem that has been hamstringing every administration since 2015. The end of the Obama administration, the first Trump administration, the Biden administration, and now the second Trump administration. So if you look at it over time, it's not a partisan problem. At any particular moment, undeniably, it is a partisan problem and has a partisan valence. But legislation should not just be about the moment. Legislation should be about the long view. And I think the only fair way to do this is to knock out the weapon of the universal injunction for everyone. Take it away from Democrats, take it away from Republicans, because what it really strikes at is our ability to have democratic self-government and effective government action by the federal government.
Mr. Panuccio, in your written testimony, you said that it's important to pass legislation to make temporary restraining orders against the government appealable. The legislation I proposed does that. Can you expand a bit more on your views here? What are temporary restraining orders, and why is it important that they be, that they're appealable?
Thank you, Chairman. It's an important question because the latest trend in non-party relief appears to be courts entering what's called a temporary restraining order instead of a preliminary injunction. Now, in my experience as a litigator in my years as a lawyer, a TRO was supposed to be a very short-term order from the court when it is impossible for the court to hold a hearing with both parties, and it might enter, for example, a 24-hour TRO until it can get a hearing on a preliminary injunction, an actual hearing with adversaries arguing the facts and the law to the court. But what we're now seeing is the courts are entering these TROs, which can, under the rules, last for up to 2 weeks and then be extended for another 2 weeks. And the issue is that the courts have interpreted TROs to not be appealable. Now, that may be a dubious interpretation, but that is the law of the land right now. And so it is effectively allowing district judges to insulate themselves from review. So it's bad enough that we have district judges saying, I am a ruler for the entire nation. But now they're saying, they're not elected, so the people can't have a say. They're also saying that the appellate judges who are supposed to oversee my decisions, I don't want them hearing it either. So let me enter a TRO instead of a preliminary injunction or some other immediately appealable order. So I do think it is virtue of your bill, Chairman, that TROs or any other similar order would be immediately appealable.
Yeah. Senator Durbin, I've asked Senator Moody to take over for me while I go to another meeting. So
She's very strict.
you
All right, so let's talk about it. The thing about this, what they're talking about with the TROs, the restraining orders, and the temporary restraining orders, and the universal injunctions. With the universal injunctions is a nationwide injunction where it allows the judges to put a cap on the executive branch's authority. And it's really a check to make sure that the president doesn't overstep their bounds. Oftentimes what happens is the judges remain the same over the periods of different presidencies. So within 5 presidencies, it might be a judge that will stay there. Then someone else will come and they might even stay there for 1 presidency, but then there will be some that stay there. Some has been there since Bush. And the reason why this is good is because it creates a long-standing, predictable behavior for the American society and for those who want to do business with us. So with getting back to the universal injunctions, just so everyone is understanding what they are essentially hearing on. Again, this is they're hearing on the federal judges and the use of universal injunctions. They're wishing to take away the power of the people and give it to the executive branch. That's essentially what they're trying to do. There have been 3 parts of government for a reason. And our forefathers knew that tyranny and somebody who has absolute power will become corrupt. So yeah, So the national is universal injunctions is nationwide injunction, court orders that prevent the government from enforcing a policy or taking action against anyone, not just the parties involved in a specific case. These injunctions have been used to block federal policies on a large scale, often leading to legal and political debates about judicial power. Recently, lawmakers have proposed limiting these injunctions, arguing that individual judges should not have the authority to halt national policies. Some believe these injunctions overstep judicial authority, while others argue that they are necessary to check executive power. And I am with the belief that it is to check the executive power simply because you see how our executive person is. Now, the thing is, if this came along when other presidents were in, then at that point, I feel like we'll have a lot more validity. But I tell you this, since the FAA is not taking care of their business, planes have been acting out, and the national highways have not been kept up, there's something that you'll notice later. When it comes to these national parks that people love to go to, you've not seen it yet, but they will be affected. A lot of things that we're taking for granted will be affected because those things that don't pay us directly, we don't do. Those are things that we don't do. When I think about government, which I'm not the best when it comes down to knowing all the nuances, but I'm learning. That's the reason why I'm watching these long form debates. The reason I'm watching long form debates is because I don't want to be baby fed information coming from mainstream media, because mainstream media is not telling us the full truth. They are scared of Trump because they're scared of being sued. So if you're scared of being sued, it's like your hands are being, it's like cutting off the person's hands. They can't write, they can't do nothing. And essentially, when you are willing to sue lawyers, whole law firms, and they are giving you money, and they're giving you money, or they might say, hey, we're not going to pay you, but we're going to give you $5 million worth of free bono work. Just leave us alone, man. And that's the type of stuff that they're doing. And this is very crucial because once he's knocked off all of his big targets, he's then going to come for the small targets. And it's not going to just end with the small targets. Well, I should say it's going to get smaller and smaller. So the easy targets, then he's going to take on the harder and harder and harder. All right, let's go ahead and continue. I feel that we've watched enough of this hearing to understand what they're talking about. I will come back to it, but I'll come back to it later on. Right now, what I will probably try to what we're going to be looking at is Cory Booker and just his amazing speech that he had. This one I will be playing for in hours straight, just 1 hour straight. But before I play it for 1 hour straight, I'm gonna go ahead and allow him to speak, and then I will be coming back on and forth, back and forth. All right.
With some freezing positions and not taking new applications or accepting fewer students than normal, according to interviews, public announcements, and internal emails obtained by STAT. The abrupt narrowing of training opportunities is leaving many future researchers at the start of their scientific journey in limbo. The academic calendar runs to the rhythm of its own sessions right now. It's typically this time of year when offer letters for PhD programs and postdoc positions in labs start hitting inboxes. Universities and academic medical centers were in the thick of that process when the NIH, under President Donald Trump, put out a policy about overhead costs known as indirect costs. This couldn't be worse timing for doing this. Waverly Ding, an associate professor at the University of Maryland who studies the biomedical sciences workforce, is creating a jolt in the market that is going to be disabling for labs, especially the smaller labs, because they won't have the human capital to do their science. It's also going to create chaos for PhDs. It's going to be a cascading chain effect through the entire ecosystem. I know we don't read science. Actually, we have a few doctors in here that do. But look at the alarm that they're sounding that this is not normal. The slowdown is happening at some universities and not at others. Some students may be unaware of the issue as they anxiously await acceptance letters without fully understanding the role national politics is playing in those decisions. Some faculty are grappling with admissions that are paused and then unpaused, while others say they are receiving little information or guidance from leadership. At the University of Southern California, and as a former Stanford football player, it's hard for me to talk about USC. I had to jab them, Senator Murphy. At the University of Southern California, faculty in some departments were told last week to pause admissions and not formalize offers to students, even those who had visited and been given verbal acceptances. The awkward part is that we are already told these applicants that they were provisionally accepted and invited them to an in-person recruitment day. Many have already purchased a flight and made hotel reservations. I mean, that is just cruel. One professor said in a faculty discussion listserv observed by STAT, I know Senator Murphy hangs out in faculty discussion listservs, that pause on admissions in psychology was lifted this week, STAT was told. Jennifer Unger, a professor who runs a doctoral program in health behavioral research in the Department of Population and Public Health Sciences at the University of Southern California Keck School of Medicine, said Wednesday she was still not able to admit the 6 graduate students for her department that had been accepted after a visit day on February 3rd. We had flown them out. We told them, we love you. We want to admit you. And then everything just stopped, Unger said. On the day Donald Trump announced they were cutting indirect costs, USC paused all PhD admissions. I just don't know what to tell.
Hey man, it's like what I was telling you about the Department of Education and then just the dismantling of them, and then just trying to target different USC, like you're saying, targeting those places with those PhD departments where they're looking for the brightest and the best, and they're not even able to have that. I mean, it's kind of sickening that you're trying to control those people who just want to help us be better as a nation. So yeah, man, with this one, I'm probably gonna let him talk for like 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna speak on what he got to say. I'm trying not to stop him. At the same time, it's like the man's passionate, man, and anything he needs, as far as we all need to really help him, because we don't have too many people who is brave enough or have the backing to handle Trump. You know, so with that being said, we need somebody. So shoot, you know, put on the Batman side symbol, put the CB symbol up. That's all I'm saying. So shoot, let's do it. Get back to it.
Tell them, Unger said to the students. Some of them have their offers and will likely go somewhere else. We've probably lost them. Despite USC's unpausing of all admissions in many departments, Unger said Wednesday she was still not able to admit students. She hoped her portal of admit students would open soon, but said this disruption was coming at a time when her field, public health, was already reeling from the actions of the Trump administration, something affecting potential graduate students as well. It's very stressful for them. This is a major life decision, she said. Adding, they were already worried about their futures. They were asking, quote, do you think we'll be able to get jobs in this environment? Do you think we'll get grants?
Have you ever seen the magic glasses that can see clearly without glasses? This glasses can not only see far away, but also see near. This smart zoom.
The dean of the graduate school at USC told Stat late Friday that the universities briefly paused PhD admissions to assess the uncertainties around federal funding, but that the admissions process was now open. Some schools, though, were continuing to accept students or had accepted graduate students before the recent turmoil and said that offers were there intact. We have no knowledge of any disruptions to graduate student admissions in the science fields, Rachel Zentz, Senior Director of Communications, said. In some cases, the pauses in hirings and admissions were implemented ahead of the NIH policy change. Evidence of how quickly the Trump administration's threats to withhold federal research dollars over diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are shifting the financial footings of universities. On February 6th, faculty at Vanderbilt University were instructed to reduce graduate admissions by half across the board, according to an email obtained by Stat. Reduce graduate admissions by half. On the same day, the faculty at the University of Washington School of Public Health received an email to pause offers to doctoral students, as well as offers of financial support to graduate students. Faculty hiring was also frozen, the email said. This Tuesday, the public health school sent out another email informing the community that some faculty hiring and PhD students would continue, some, but at a greatly diminished level. The school is also planning to take more cost containment measures, including a hiring freeze, a reappointment freeze. Through the end of the academic year, due to the volatility caused by the Trump administration. Existing offers will be honored, wrote Hillary Goodwin, Dean of the University of Washington School of Public Health. Marion Pepper, chair of UW's immunology department, said she was instructed by the university leadership to keep her program's next generation cohort smaller than the usual 5 to 9 students admitted each year. That's easier said than done, because the proportion of students who accept offers of admissions varies years to year. Pepper told Stat that while she expects the incoming class to be slightly smaller than usual, she has spoken with program heads at UW and elsewhere who are reducing class sizes by half or more. I know for other programs, they're feeling bleak about how they're going to keep labs running without funding or students, Pepper said. It's pretty overwhelming. Medical schools are hit hard. Medical research hit hard. It's unclear how many other universities are taking similar preemptive belt-tightening measures, but schools of public health and medical schools are particularly vulnerable because they tend to have many faculty postdocs and graduate students supported by grants. Boston University, this is the month of Passover, and there's a wonderful song I love singing when I'm at a Pesach, the Dayenu. It would have been enough, is the song, if God just delivered us from Egypt. It would have been enough if he parted the seas. It would have been enough. Dayenu, Dayenu, Dayenu. This is a kind of a twisted version of that. When is it enough? When the President of the United States starts a meme coin on his first day, violating the emoluments clause immediately and enriching himself. When is it enough when he takes an agency that is on the front lines of stopping infectious diseases like Ebola or tuberculosis-resistant, drug-resistant tuberculosis from coming here? Is that enough? When we created that in Congress and he has no right to stop that agency, would that been enough?
Do you have old pictures on your PC or smartphone? Then this video is for you. This tiny device can safely...
When is it enough for him to issue executive orders that trample on the highest ideals of this land, when he mocks members of the court so badly that even the current Chief Justice admonishes him? When is it enough? When Elon Musk is indiscriminately firing people and then realizing, oops, we need the FAA safety folks. Oops, we need the nuclear folks who are helping us keep our regulation. When is it enough that you will say, okay, I'll call them in and have a hearing to create some transparency in what he's doing? When is it enough when he activates the Alien Enemies Acts and starts disappearing human beings without due process? When is it enough? Well, it's enough for me. It's enough for me. 12 hours now I'm standing and I'm still going strong because this president is wrong. And he's violating principles that we hold dear and principles in this document that are so clear and plain. The powers of the Article 1 branch are spelled out and he is violating them. Don't take my word for it. Republican appointed judges, Democrat appointed judges are saying it and stopping him, and then he maligns the judge that did that. When is it enough for people to speak out and not just fall in line, to put patriotism over a person that's in the White House? So to your question, sir, to my friend, and I'm sorry to get a little animated at this early morning hour, but I am so frustrated. And not just because of that, but I'm reading the stories. We're going into the next section, which is national security, and I'm reading the stories of our citizens of this country, not just New Jerseyans. There's a lot we've read in these 12 hours, but there are people from all over the country are reaching out to my office, and I know they are yours. You're the second highest ranking Democrat in here. I know they're reaching out to you because you're a man that stands for justice. I know they reach out to your office too because you're one of these outposts for sanity in a Congress that is being too complicit to an executive that is overstepping his authority and violating the Constitution and hurting people who rely on health care and Social Security. I'm reading these stories, sir, because the voices of the Americans that don't have the privilege that the 100 of us don't get to stand here, but I believe the power of the people is greater than the people in power. That's the ideals of our democracy and our Constitution. So I'm rip-roaring and ready. I'm wide awake. I'm going to stand here for as many hours as I can, 12 hours, and I recognize that my other friend, another person I consider more than a friend, like a sister to me, from the state of New York, my neighbor.
Senator Booker, would you yield for a question?
My sister, for you, I will yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Senator Booker, I've been listening to this debate all night, and I gotta say, you're on fire. And you're on fire because the American people are very, very angry about what is happening. They are not happy with what this administration has done. It's contrary to what was promised. It's contrary to what was expected. And I know we're going to talk about national security in a few minutes, but can I ask a question about one of the topics you talked about last night? Because it was exactly what my constituents were talking to me about yesterday. So I was in New York yesterday, and we talked about these cuts to Social Security. I have to say, I was stopped by the gentleman who worked at Amtrak and said, Madam Senator, I just want to thank you for protecting my Social Security. That has never happened to me before. Never happened at Amtrak to be stopped by someone who worked there to thank me for one thing I had done that day. But I'm telling you, Senator Booker, when Elon Musk stops firing people, starts firing people at Social Security and tells the Social Security Administration, you cannot answer the phone, what are our mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers supposed to do? Many of them are not readily available to be on a computer. Many of them can't ask their question online. And worse, Elon Musk is expecting them to show up in person at a Social Security office. How many of our older Americans are not able to drive anymore or are uncomfortable driving? How many of our older Americans feel uncomfortable getting in the subway to get to a Social Security Administration because there's stairs or because the lighting's not good enough? These are the challenges that our older Americans have. And so I just want to talk about the things you told us last night about the risk to Social Security.
This 7-second trick helped me at the age of 62 eliminate type 2 and toss out my insulin. If I were to die tomorrow, I would want
Social Security is our seniors' money. It's not the government's money. It's their money. So what happens when you make it hard for a senior to call and make sure their check's on the way, or their check never showed up and they can't find it? For a lot of older Americans, that Social Security check is the only money they have for that month. It pays for food, right? It pays for heating bills. It pays for their medicine. It pays for their rent. It pays for everything they need to survive. And Elon Musk's office doesn't believe anybody should be answering the phones. Who is he to tell America how to run its Social Security Administration when our seniors need those checks? They've crippled the phone service, even though, get this one, can't answer the phone, crippled the phone service, you can only make an appointment on the phone. So how are you supposed to make an appointment if you are going to go in? I mean, that's absurd. They plan to cut 7,000 staff. That's a lot of staff. 7,000 staff. Even though the Social Security Administration staffing is already at a 50-year low. So they are lying when they are saying this is about efficiency. They just want the money. And what do they want the money for? Tax cuts for billionaire buddies of Elon Musk. It is an obscenity. It is an absurdity. It is an outrage. And everyone in America should be concerned. Hands off our Social Security, Elon Musk and President Trump. Hands off. They are rallying all across the country to say, hands off my Social Security, hands off my Medicare, hands off my Medicaid. It's an outrage, and I don't think people should stand for it. Because your Social Security check is your hard-earned money. It is not for Elon Musk to play with, to shift around, or send it to tax breaks for his billionaire friends. Now, I have to say, my office has been working closely with one senior. Now, she's a New Yorker with a disability, and she was told that she had to call a specific representative's extension by the end of March. Well, that was yesterday. And if she didn't get this person, her application could be denied. She's called every day, sometimes more than once a day. She has been on hold for 4 to 5 hours just to reach this representative. As of yesterday, when we reached out to her, she had still not reached the representative. So Americans across the country are panicked. They are stressed. They are worried that they won't get their hard-earned money back, their retirement, to pay for the things that they need. Now, this is the money they've spent their entire careers paying into. You know, every time you get a paycheck, Senator Booker, there's a line that says Social Security because that money's been taken out of your paycheck and put into Social Security, so it's there for you when you retire. It's your retirement. The page is sitting here right here. You are paying into your Social Security. Now imagine this is your first paycheck, isn't it? I bet it is your first paycheck. Your first paycheck, you're putting in dollars that, you know, are you want saved so that when you can't even imagine what it's going to be like to be 65. But the day you're working here, the fact that you spent all night here supporting Senator Booker, that's your retirement. Wouldn't you be pissed off if Elon Musk took your retirement money? You should be. He doesn't have any right to it. And what he's doing is he's doing it by cutting staff. So if you need help because your Social Security didn't arrive, then how are you supposed to get that check? They can't issue you a new one unless they know that it didn't show up in the mail like it's supposed to. Ultimately, cutting individuals from Social Security doesn't just affect them, it affects the entire economy. So you can imagine if all our seniors are getting this Social Security benefit, you can't go then buy your groceries. You're not going to be able to then go buy whatever you need for your home. Those stores will get less money, and that means there'll be less resources in the economy. Social Security, if you didn't know it, it's our country's largest anti-poverty program. It keeps people out of poverty. That's what it does. When we designed Social Security, however many decades ago, it was so that our seniors don't die in poverty, because they were dying. About half of seniors at that time were dying in poverty. They didn't have enough food to live. And so we created Social Security. It's one of the most popular programs. It's one of the most effective programs. So reducing access to this key program, Senator Booker, is an outrage. It's harmful, it's cruel, it's hurtful. So I know that this is something that you've really spent a lot of time on last night, but don't you think it's cruel?
If feet are numb and the sensation won't go away, do this 30-second biblical ritual to relieve nerve pain. Christians
To not allow phone service? Don't you think it's wrong to make it harder for people to get access to their hard-earned money? Don't you think this is something that America did not sign up for in this election?
I read last night, thank you for the question, my friend. I read last night some of the most painful letters of people over and over again from throughout my state and through other states who are living in fear, who use words like terrified and told stories that they couldn't sleep because of the rhetoric of this president, the rhetoric of Elon Musk calling it a Ponzi scheme, telling lies during a joint address. And then I read stories from people that work in Social Security. They're telling about not having desks and the waiting lines and the inefficiencies that this has created and the horrible, deteriorating customer service. Yeah. And I've been trying as much as I can during this last 12 hours to read the stories of Republicans.
Yeah, this affects everyone.
Yes. To read editorials from the Wall Street Journal to just show that this isn't a partisan thing. This isn't about left or right. It's about right or wrong. It's about, will we as a country honor our commitments that we made? And then I read independent folks that are saying this is crazy, that this program is even in jeopardy.
I have another question for you, because I know you want to move on to some national security issues this morning.
I will yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Thank you, Senator Booker.
Hey, so what I'm saying is, you see Elon Musk saying that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, and it's like the weight of the Social Security system is bigger than what is being put into it. But the thing is, you could easily adjust those numbers. But instead of him trying to keep it, trying to save it, he'd rather get rid of it because he's the type of person who will never need Social Security. None of his family will. For the pet, if he stopped doing what he's doing, because right now with the way he's going, he's either going to be the richest or he's not going to really have all that money anymore. One of the two is going to happen, because if he's willing to put 25 million into a campaign and lose, and I hope he keeps losing and losing and losing and losing, if he was to do that, then his time is like his kids won't have the money. But if he was to not spend any money, so Social Security is not as worried. Of course, to rich billionaires, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. You know what I'm saying? Because they're not going to get it back. They're not worried about it. But for the person who just wanted to raise their kids and didn't think about retirement as much as him and other people who are financial advisors who are worried about their 80s, yeah, man, Social Security is needed, man. You know how many people, like right now, like when you're 65, you can't go out and work like that. That's crazy. Nobody gonna hire you. You too much of a risk. Then you complain. You know too much. You don't want to do enough. Your energy's low. You know what I mean? So him targeting Social Security is like him targeting your grandma. And with that being said, let's go ahead and continue on listening to them. And the main reason why I'm listening to these people is because these are the senators that have been standing up for us. And it's good to know what they know and why they are doing what they do. And if they spend 24 hours talking about these subjects, I mean, we could spend like an hour looking at it. That's all I'm saying. They spend 24, we'll spend an hour. I'll give you 24 for what you put in, Mr. Booker. Appreciate you. Let's do it. Oh, one thing that's crazy about this is the fact that the person who first held the longest record did it to keep discrimination. He did it for segregation reasons. So by Cory Booker doing this, it really highlights the turn of a lot of the evils, and this is like, I feel like this might be potentially one of the last biggest stands Americans could have over fascism for the next 30 years, because it's going to be somebody worse than Elon Musk and Trump put together in the next 50. But the next 30, I don't foresee anyone being worse than Trump, just because of the political and popular pull he has with people. All right, let's get into it.
So the other thing that stressed out my constituents that I talked to about this weekend is air safety. They're very, very stressed out about these cuts to the FAA. You know, there was a plane crash not too far from here, helicopter crash. Everyone on the helicopter perished. We've been reading about stories across the country about flight safety and the fact that there are near collisions all the time. We had a horrible crash in New York, in Buffalo, the Colgan Air crash. I've gotten to know the families over the last several years because they've worked together for legislation to make sure we have pilot safety.
Hey, have you ever been told you have a nice voice? Well, what if I told you you could turn your...
But what I've been watching in terms of this administration is they don't seem to care. They just have made up this idea that cuts across the board are necessary to get rid of fraud and waste in the budget. And I agree, we can make government more efficient, but the way you do that is at least learn what each of these agencies do, study what's happening in them and how to make them more efficient. Make sure the right number of personnel are hired. Make sure the right training is offered. Make sure there's no wasteful programs. That's good government. That is not what Elon Musk and his Doge boys are doing. That is nothing like what they are doing. They're just cutting everything because they want to make space for these tax cuts for their billionaire buddies. It's really disgraceful. It's something that I don't quite understand. So over the past 2 months, just the past two months, we've seen horrifying accidents and near misses at airports all across the country. And there was another close call just this past Friday, again at DCA. Many of these accidents have been a result of chronic understaffing and antiquated technologies at the FAA. But instead of fixing those problems, the first thing the Trump administration did when it came to power was fire people. I think he's kind of stuck in the loop of The Apprentice. You're fired, you're fired, you're fired. I don't get it. Like, good government is important, and I support efficiency. That's not what they're doing. It's like they're on a power trip, and they just want to fire everybody across the board. Just fire them all. So while a court forced the FAA to rehire workers, thank God for the courts. Thank God for the judges that are doing their jobs and looking at these lawsuits appropriately. Many federal workers have simply moved on and found new jobs because these are highly skilled, highly sought after employees, people that we really want working in the federal government to keep our country safe. Now, just weeks after the horrific plane crash here with 67 people getting killed in Washington, the administration fired hundreds of Federal Aviation Administration employees, jeopardizing the public safety and threatening our national security. So that made no sense. Like, it was right on the heels of some horrific accident that we all witnessed. Now, over 90% of U.S. airport terminal towers don't have enough air traffic controllers. Critical shortages remain for other aviation safety personnel as well, such as safety inspectors and mechanics, because to make sure when we get on that plane, the plane's ready to go. In New York, nearly 40% of positions are unfilled at 2 facilities on Long Island that direct air traffic for Newark, our shared airport, JFK, and LaGuardia. As a result, over these past few years, the U.S. has experienced a substantial and alarming increase in the number of near misses. According to an analysis from the New York Times, in 2023, close calls involving commercial airlines occurred on average multiple times each week. And a number of significant air traffic control lapses increased 65% over the previous year. What did they cite as the major reason behind the increase? A shortage of air traffic controllers. While the Trump administration claims no air traffic controllers or critical safety personnel were fired, we know that many of those who were let go played an essential role in maintaining our air traffic control infrastructure. Others were responsible for maintaining navigational, landing, and radar systems. We also know that safety inspectors, systems specialists, maintenance mechanics are among workers who are affected, and at least one of the employees fired worked for FAA's National Defense Program, which protects our airspace from enemy drones, missiles, aircraft, and used as weapons. I want to talk about those missiles and drones as well. I really want to talk to you about what your thinking is here, that we don't have a plan.
Gabapentin is bringing you closer to amputation. These are 3 symptoms that are signaling that you
had the incursions in New Jersey, incursions in New York at the same time. And we don't have assurance that those drones aren't being operated by China or Russia or Iran or another adversary for a nefarious purpose. We have to get to the bottom of this. And that's something that, Senator Booker, you and I have been at the forefront on when questioning the administration about what they're doing on this issue. So the question I have is, why did the administration fire these workers and so easily part with them? Who will perform these duties going forward? What risk analysis was performed to ensure this won't make flying less safe? Now, I asked these questions of the Secretary of Transportation in a letter on February 20th, over a month ago. And what was their response? We don't know. They haven't answered my letter. They're not willing to engage the Senate in actually policy and decisions that keep our state safe. What's worse is that we don't know if this is where it ends or if more reductions are coming and more reductions that allow for safety for our FAA. Now, DOGE's so-called workforce optimization initiative, it's BS. They don't do the analysis first. They just make the cuts. We need the Secretary and the acting FAA administrator to be responsive to Congress's questions and oversight. The American people deserve to have a federal aviation agency that is dedicated to actually doing the job of protecting us, protecting this country. The Trump administration needs to take immediate steps to address FAA staffing shortages across the entire agency, not just air traffic controllers. So, Senator Booker, the question I really want to ask you is, for your state, for New Jerseyans, what are they thinking? Like, how do they receive this information? What do they say when they read about drone incursions over one of your arsenals, over one of your sensitive military bases? What do they think about cutting staff to the FAA when they watch all this information about crashes? I know my constituents are pretty stressed out about it. They don't understand why someone's making these cuts. Again, the why is the most important question. It's not for efficiency. It's not to get rid of the fat. It's not to get rid of the fraud. Never heard an allegation there's fraud in the FAA. Never heard an allegation there's fat in the FAA. They've been understaffed forever. So they're lying about the purpose. So what is the purpose? What is the purpose? What are they going to do with that money, Senator Booker? I'd like to know.
So I appreciate this more than you know, and there's a line threaded throughout your entire question about the way they're going about doing this from so many agencies. First, they're trying to kill certain agencies, Department of Education, which they can't legally do. The USAID, they can't legally do. We created that. It's the Article I branch of government. But on some of these other agencies, like Social Security, where you started, we know it's ready, fire, aim, and actually the aim part never happens. They're savagely cutting personnel, and organization after organization, seniors, thousands of them, are already writing in about the undermining of service. The Wall Street Journal article we read last night said that the customer service at Social Security is going from bad to worse, and painted horrific pictures that are putting seniors in crisis. Not to mention the closing of Social Security centers in rural areas where people have to now drive hours and hours and hours. And so the FAA, it was one of the early outrages that they hired people that they then realized they needed and tried to find some way to pull some of them back. And you and I both know that the way they talk about government workers, a large percentage of them are our veterans, the way they demean and degrade them, the way they accuse them of being parts of corruption, fraud, or fat, when the stories we've been reading of what some of these folks do is extraordinary. And so your question, though, brings up a lot of national security issues. I'm going to bridge to that because you and I both were really, really incensed that we weren't getting enough information when we had these incursions. And I want to start what I've been doing in other sections. It's just reading, elevating on this floor the voices of people from our country, trying to elevate more of the voices to let people know we see you, we hear you, your outrage, your hurt, your fears. They have value.
I have another question before you start your letters, Senator Booker, if you'd like to entertain another question, if you'll yield.
I will yield a question while retaining the floor.
Okay. So, because you're going into the national security section, and I want to give you a couple of questions to pepper your answers, because I sit on the Special Committee on Intelligence in the Senate. I also sit on the Armed Services Committee. And so national security is an area where New Yorkers care a deep amount about. And I've been spending the last 15 years focused on how we keep this country safe and what we should be doing. And so I get a lot of questions from New Yorkers about this issue. So I want you to address the drone issue for sure, because that is something you and I have been working on continuously since we've seen these incursions. And just to give a little more context for New Yorkers who might be listening to this debate, we've had drone incursions over sensitive military sites for quite some time now. And it's something that I've been working on a bipartisan basis through the Intelligence Committee.
The nerve affected by neuropathy won't ever be a problem again if you take this vitamin in the morning.
And some of these incursions are every night, over and over again, over sensitive military bases. There was one over Langley. We've had them over arsenals in New Jersey, over sensitive sites in New York. We've had them over military bases across the country. And, you know, I don't like it when the answer is, oh, we know where most of this is. This is mostly FAA traffic. And I don't like it when I hear it from this administration or any administration, because it's not true. Some of the drone sightings are planes in the air, helicopters, you know, maybe weather balloons, maybe enthusiasts, but they do not know if all are. And in these specific incursions, they do not know the origin of them. They do not know whose they are. They do not know who is operating them. They do not know the purpose of these drones. These drones could easily be spying. They could be planning attacks. They could be doing anything nefarious. We have no basis to say it is all known and we are not concerned. And so this is something we are going to get to the bottom of. I am very incensed about it. It does not leave our personnel as safe and does not leave our secrets safe. So drones is one issue. The second issue, if you could address on the national security side, is cybersecurity. I think that, and election security, one of the cuts that the Doge boys made, which I literally cannot understand why they would ever do this. This is making us weaker. It is making us less safe. It is not good for America. And it shows how ill-advised this process is and how uninformed this process is and how we can see through these cuts how insincere this process is. This is not about waste. This is not about fraud. This is not about good government. This is about making massive cuts for tax breaks for billionaires, because that is where they want to spend your tax dollars. New Yorkers' tax dollars and New Jerseyans' tax dollars. They want to take it and give it to tax breaks to the billionaires. Okay, so this is the question. These cuts, they have cut all the personnel or the main personnel at an organization called CISA that were supposed to be doing election security. So the people who actually were working with the states to make sure our election system can't be hacked, they fired those people. They fired the senior personnel at the Department of Defense, our most experienced generals, across the board, members from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, just fired them. For what reason? I don't know. No substantive reason was ever given. But these are the senior personnel who actually keep us from wars, who have the judgment and the experience to advise the president, to advise Congress, to advise us on how to keep us safe. And then the last group they cut were the lawyers. Do you remember that Shakespeare play, The First Thing We Do Is Kill All the Lawyers? Well, the context in which that was given was in order to have a coup. So Shakespeare, hundreds of years ago, said, if you want to have a coup, the first thing you do is kill all the lawyers. Well, they fired all the lawyers, the senior lawyers at the Department of Defense. They fired the generals who actually know how to keep us safe. And then they fired the personnel at CISA who are responsible for election interference. They fired the people at the FBI who are also responsible for election interference. So again, these firings make no sense. I don't think they're making us I don't think they're making us more safe. I think they are making us less safe. When you fire the people who know what they're doing and are dedicated to keeping us safe, doesn't make us safer. What do you think, Senator Booker, about any of the topics that I raised, specifically the drones, the firing of the election protection personnel at CISA, the firing of the generals, the firing of the senior lawyers at the Department of Defense, firing of the FBI personnel, also expert at election interfering. These are the smartest, most capable, the most sophisticated senior personnel that are there to help us keep this country safe. I really want to hear what you're hearing for your state and what you're thinking about this reckless approach to national security.
I'm so grateful for the questions from my colleague, from my friend. I want folks to know that probably the best dinner I had when I came here was with the senator from New York, who really gave me a quick rundown on how to get things done in this body. I've watched her work on both sides of the aisle relentlessly to get things over the finish line, to help people in our region, from 9/11 folks who were our first responders to get their health care, to fight to support the military, empower the military, but to fight against sexual assault in the military. She is one of these phenomenal people. And a lot of her questions we're going to get to, including that question that was obviously painful about national security, is that, like, hey, one of the strategies of Russia, we know this, is to attack elections of other democracies, to try to sow discord, to try to undermine the very voting process. And the Trump administration pulled away a lot of the people in the DOJ and elsewhere that their sole purpose was to fight against foreign election interference. And so how can we have a nation where the president that's in charge of national security is not doing things to address the issues that were in your questions? And I want to start by reading a couple constituent letters. I know we want to step back and talk a little bit about immigration because my colleague and my friend and my partner in leadership in the Senate, Tina Smith, is here. But I want to get into some of these letters because I said over 12 hours ago that we were going to continue to elevate the voices of people out there. And so this is coming from someone from New Jersey. And they're writing, "Dear Senator Booker, I'm writing to express my deep concern regarding the current state of our nation and the lack of response to the looming constitutional crisis. It is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore the actions of a president who routinely lies and makes outrageous proposals such as annexing Greenland, Mexico, and Panama, or even renaming the Gulf of Mexico. Those proposals not only undermine our international standing, but also disrespect the foundations of our country. Furthermore, I'm alarmed by the growing threat to press freedom. Recently, for example, the Associated Press was barred from the White House press room simply for referring to the Gulf of Mexico rather than the Gulf of America, a clear sign that the president's disregard for free speech and free press's role in holding power to account. The president is actively trampling on the Constitution and blatantly ignoring the rule of law, as Senator Gillibrand was saying. He has taken steps to slash vital federal agencies and disaster relief programs, undermining our nation's capacity to respond to crises. His decision to appoint unqualified individuals to high positions for the purpose of following his will is another example of how our democratic systems are being systematically weakened. Additionally, his reckless and irresponsible approach to foreign policy is making the world more dangerous. His insistence on blaming Ukraine for Russia's invasion and ongoing war is not only historically inaccurate, but also deeply damaging to our allies and global stability. Even worse, his administration has entertained so-called, in quotes, peace settlements that exclude Ukraine from the process entirely, effectively allowing Russia to dictate terms without any Ukrainian input. Such actions betray our commitments to sovereignty and democracy and embolden authoritarian regimes worldwide. Domestically, his agenda is destructive. His administration has pursued the withdrawal from USAID, the gutting of critical global humanitarian and development efforts that have long served U.S. interests abroad. At home, he is enabling tech billionaires like Elon Musk to take a chainsaw to government agencies, arbitrarily dismantling institutions that provide essential public services. His attacks on the NIH and its funding jeopardize critical medical research. and public health initiatives undermining scientific progress for purely ideological reasons. Beyond these threats, his treatment of our closest allies is both reckless and embarrassing. His taunting of Canada, whether through inflammatory rhetoric or deliberate policy snubs, weakens our diplomatic ties and disregards the importance of maintaining strong relationships with our neighbors. This petty, short-sighted approach to international relations is isolating the U.S. at a time when global cooperation is more critical than ever. My greatest frustration, however, is the lack of action from our representatives and governors. Too many are cowering in fear of the president's authoritarian tactics. I am troubled by the absence of pushback. I am troubled by the absence of pushback. I'm troubled by the absence of pushback. We are witnessing the erosion of checks and balances, and the consequences could be dire. I was heartened by Governor Janet Mills of Maine standing up to the president's orders. Unfortunately, his response was a threat to her political future, further evidence of the intimidation tactics being employed. I implore you, Senator Booker, to show some moral courage and take meaningful action to stand up to this growing threat to our democracy. Please let me know how you are responding to this situation and what steps you, Senator Booker, are taking to defend our Constitution and the rule of law. Thank you for your time, and I look forward from hearing from you soon. I hope at this early morning hour at almost 8 o'clock that maybe you are listening, because I hear you, I see you, and I'm standing here because, in part, of letters like yours. This is not normal. These are not normal times. We must begin to do as John Lewis says, get in good trouble, get in necessary trouble. I want to read another constituent.
Hey, what's going on? So as you see, Cory Booker, he's taking the words of his constituents and putting it on the floor. He also has allies that are bringing up great valid points about the drone incursions that are happening over New Jersey and New Orleans. I said New Orleans, I meant New York. So the Defense Department just getting rid of those people, those generals who know how to keep us safe, and then replacing all of our executive branch members with loyalists, and whatever he can touch, he's going to put whoever he feels is going to have his agenda in mind, as opposed to America's agenda in mind. A lot of times the American agenda and the president's agenda are similar. Most times they're not the same, but this one does not overlap with American sentiments, at least for the American people. So what I'm saying is we gonna keep track, and we gonna keep watching and seeing what they do, and let's go ahead and let's make it a point to stay vigilant in protecting our democracy. Again, this is food for democracy. Let's protect our democracy. All right, so again, I really appreciate Cory Booker for standing up in the Senate Hall, doing what he has to do. The panda bear, Elon Musk, we got to get rid of him I believe right now they even talk about getting rid of him because he is even more unpopular than President Trump, and he's unpopular than ever. When you are looking to make a difference, these are the places that you need to check out for. Handsoff2025.com, TeslaTakedown.com. Look up a 50501 near you, and ResistanceLab.com. Those are the resources that you can use to protect democracy right now. So, peace and many blessings. Like, comment, subscribe. Please put some comments down. I do not mind conversing, debating. If you'd like to come and be a part of the leadership mandate research that will be happening and more depth after this week. This week is only more of a reading of the pamphlet. Next, in this month, we're going to be more deep diving into the actual mandate itself, referencing things outside of the mandate in the brochure. So I look forward to seeing y'all and hearing y'all. Let's go ahead and make it a great one. Make it a great day or not. Choice is yours.